We're now going to hear from Jacinta Tan. She's here to actually tell us about two things that she presented on at the recent conference. And I've allowed her to use PowerPoints, even though I know many of you, I said no PowerPoints, but I have my reasons. So we're going to have PowerPoints for this short bit, I think. Can I just say that there are still some people standing. If you would prefer to sit, I believe there are still several chairs here. Here. So please come forward. And while we're doing housekeeping, this is a straw. It's also biodegradable. It's not a plastic, toxic, turtle-killing straw. I have a young environmentalist friend who made sure that I could do that. So there are 4 different colors. We got a little rush towards the end, so towards the end of registration. Those of you who don't have a straw yet, please go to the back when you have a moment, when you have a break. Because later in the afternoon, we're going to do group sessions. We're going to split into 4 groups. Not entirely sure how, but you will be divided. You'll know where to go by the color of your straw. There's a color-coded thing back there that will tell you what each straw means, and you go choose a straw. So try to make sure you do that. And while I've still got you, I also want to point out that we have some swag bags back there. If you go put your name on a Post-it note back there, you could receive one of these wonderfully conceived, generous, gorgeous comfort packages for you caregivers. So when you have a moment, go over and put your name in the running for that. If you can see right in the back, see the blue bag there? See people pointing? Yeah. We want to send some of you. I wish I could send all of you home with comfort, but this is a small little bit of generosity from many of our wonderful volunteers here at F.E.A.S.T who put these together. Welcome.
Thank you, Laura. I apologize. When I came in and Laura told me, no, you can't have PowerPoint, I was like, because that's on my comfort zone. And then I thought, okay, I can do this. So I wrote down what I was going to write, and now I'm allowed to have my PowerPoints. But you might find that I then ignore my PowerPoints. But I presented 3 things at the AED conference. I'm just going to put that there. And I'm going to tell you about all of them because I think they do connect, and I feel really privileged to follow Laura Hill because she said quite a lot of things I like to build on. And the first thing I want to tell you about, if this works, nope, I'm doing it the wrong way. I was in a plenary looking at compulsory treatment. I'm an ethicist, and I'm an eating disorder psychiatrist and also a child psychiatrist by background. And we did this plenary about compulsory treatment, which I know is a really, difficult issue. And I was so pleased that AED did want to have this plenary. And then we talked about, just to make it so much easier, we talked about deep brain stimulation, and that's a workshop I was part of. And I presented a poster, which 3 people came to see. But I talked about it in the plenary, so that's okay. And I want to tell you about all that. And so this is the plenary. But basically, this is my take-home message. So you've kind of skipped 1.5 hours, and this is the good bit. And I was asked to talk to what's the right call. The right call with regard to whether we should or shouldn't compel people to have treatment. As an ethicist, I never say, this is the right thing. I'm really frustrating that way. I think the right call comes from sitting with the messiness of eating disorders, and the feelings and the relationships and all the things that's going on. I think, you see, it's not about BMIs. We had some questions, is it about BMI? It's when your BMI drops down to 13 or something. I'm told that's a dirty word, so sorry. And no, it's about hearing people. It's about negotiation. It's about trust, and support. It's about clinicians being humble and honest and open about our own uncertainty, because we are very uncertain. I think Laura Hill just told you, our state of the art is so behind, say, oncology or diabetes. We need to know what we know. We need to be expert, but we also need to be really humble and able to say, do you know what? I don't know if I've messed up here. Is this the right thing? Is this the wrong thing? And struggle with people about it. It's about stepping in when needed to save people to fight another day. And when I did in-depth research about compulsory treatment and capacity, that's the theme that came up. People said compulsory treatment, making people of treatment, doesn't get them better. What it does is it saves them to fight another day. And it's about helping people who may be unable to help themselves. And that's what all you guys are here for. That's why you're our partners in the fight. But always respectfully, kindly, and maintaining hope. And in forums like the AED, sometimes I really worry because we're going on and on and on about the evidence. But actually, it's not just about the evidence. We need the evidence. But actually, I see it as this kind of intersection, that it's all about the person. It's all about the family. It's about respect, individualized care. It has got to be based on what your values are, shared decision-making. It has to be culture sensitive. And I don't just mean culture like the color of my skin. I actually mean, different families have different cultures. We all have different ways of doing things. And clinicians, I do worry sometimes with all these manualized treatments that we actually need to learn to see people and see what they're like. We need to actually, a huge theme that came out of all the research I've done is relationships. And again, that's not in the RCTs. But when you meet the real experts, they know how to have relationships. But then you can't pot it. You can't put it in your paper. And it is about team reflexivity. What I mean by reflexivity is the ability to reflect on yourself. So actually say, what's going on? Am I doing this because I feel angry and frustrated and all that kind of thing? Learning to do that, the team being willing to have second opinion, to be inclusive, to give everybody a voice. And of course, it's also about the facts of the situation. I'm not dissing science. Science is really, really important. And we need to know how to quantify the risk, evidence-based feasibility, very importantly, the legality of things, capacity, prognosis, quality of life. So I put all these things around it because I think actually these are the really important things that sometimes you don't talk about enough. Now, I'm going to actually talk about one of those things a great deal, but in terms of deep brain stimulation, which Laura very helpfully talked about. And I'm going to go through that. I know I'm going to be thrown off the stage in 5 minutes, so I'm going as fast as I can. Now, I am the ethicist on the English trial. I'm independent. Right from the start, we built in an ethics sub-study, which I run. So I sit there. I am the gatekeeper. I have to, when a patient might be suitable, I have to do in-depth interviews. I assess the capacity. But actually, it's not just whether you have capacity, they all do. It is about trying to look at motivations and everything. And the theme, I find, is that the kinds of people who now would be considered for deep brain stimulation, because it's so speculative, they're really severe, they've had it for so long, and they're desperate. Absolutely desperate. And it's heartbreaking, how this is their last hope. And it's really, really hard for me. I haven't said no to anybody yet. So, it's so difficult. But I think there are real issues about, is something like DBS seen as the magic bullet? And a theme that's come up really interestingly is DBS seen as almost the solution because it's something that's done to you. The surgeon puts in this thing, you've got nothing to do with it in that sense. It does to you. And I actually have been reflecting very much about the difference between our usual therapies and the being done to, And it's a difficult one because I have some worries about the notion that, it's all genetics. We have this tablet that will make you better. And some of the stories that have come out of the DBS trials are like the patient woke up and said, I fancy a slice of pizza or something like that. And that really makes me worry because I don't think that's a little bit too deterministic. And I think, yes, we are the sum of our genes and our traits and everything. But also there's something about the project of being human. So I'm going to give you an illustration. I've had depression in my life, and I entered therapy. It went on a long time. And I wanted, in hindsight, a personality transplant. I really did. I didn't like who I was. At the end of 10 years of really expensive therapy, I discovered that, do you know what? I'm stuck with who I am. But not just that. I actually learned that I had to learn to accept who I was. And those were my strengths as well as my weaknesses. And I think with eating disorders, listening to Laura, it's the same sort of thing. I'm perfectionistic, I'm obsessive, I'm whatever. It actually helps me be successful. It is about the very same genes and traits and everything could make you really successful, which I'm not yet, or they can make you depressed. They can give you an eating disorder and all that. And I think the notion of a magic bullet slightly denies that. And I think we don't do people any favors if we pretend to them that there will be a magic bullet. Just you wait, we'll get a magic bullet. But that's not to say that something like deep brain stimulation might not actually help. And so far, we've done very few numbers because we agonize over everyone. We've had 4 completed, 2 have got quite a lot better. And when we ask them what's different, it's about having a little bit more freedom to make your choice. And that's the difference, you see. So it didn't make them magically better so they suddenly want pizza. But it's made them able to say, do you know what? I want a life. And do you know what? I'm going to work towards that. And I think that's the really deep stuff. So, sorry. So this is one final thing I want to talk about, if I have the time. Is that all right? Yeah.
We'll do fewer questions, but more.
Okay. Okay. One final thing. This is the poster that nobody came to see. Medical students and I did an online survey about the experiences of inpatient admission. And I know inpatient admissions can be incredibly painful, and I'm really interested in how people feel about it, whether there's coercion. And what we actually looked at was the types of admissions, and there were 3 subscales in this instrument. Perceived coercion is whether you felt that people were making you come in. Negative pressure is things like threats, inducements. Procedural justice is whether you were involved in the decision to be admitted. And what we found is a strong positive correlation between perceived coercion and negative pressure. You'd expect that. And correlation between procedural justice and both perceived coercion and negative pressure. People who were admitted to hospital voluntarily, of course, felt less, voluntarily had less coercion in the perception. But actually, I think we also looked at the emotions. This was the most important. Perceived coercion is related to negative pressure and lack of procedural justice. But we found the perception of coercion may not necessarily compromise treatment outcomes, but higher levels of perceived coercion negatively impact on their experience of admission. We also found that perceived outcomes, whether you were recovering, or still unwell, didn't seem to be related to any of these things. So that was quite interesting. And we felt that admitting people with more procedural justice could lower the levels of perceived coercion and negative pressure. But the take home about that was actually the compulsory treatment, whether you were brought in on mental health legislation or you made the decision, actually is not the same as whether you feel coerced. So people in my qualitative research were describing the same levels of what I was thinking, wait a minute, you're being coerced, and they were calling it support. And the $1 million question it all came down to was relationships. If I trust you and you're saying, look, let's face facts, you need this, okay? And honest truth, I'll make you come in if you have to. But you know and I know, and then these people, they trusted their parents, they trusted their clinicians, and it was okay. And so that was really quite pivotal on whether people felt coercion. Thank you.
Marvelous.